Rohrabache of the European and Emerging Threats Subcommittee.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. Let me agree with Mr. Meeks that this is a very complicated issue and perhaps a lot more complicated than the black and white alternatives that we have been hearing about today. At one point, we've heard that the Ukraine desperately needs economic help. And I would hope that our goal is to do what's right by Ukraine and bring peace to Ukraine, and not our goal being to basically defeat and humiliate Russia for actions that it has taken. Because if that's our goal, the people of Ukraine will continue to suffer and suffer and suffer. Back to the Ukraine desperately needs economic help. This whole incident in history started when the government of what you called the rotten regime that preceded the current government of Ukraine went to our European allies to ask for help that it desperately needed for its economy. And the deal that was offered by our European allies was not sufficient, and in fact was much less than what the Russians offered them instead. And when that deal was taken by the rotten regime that you mentioned, all of a sudden that's when it became so rotten that we no longer, or the people could no longer put up with it. The pivotal moment was when it accepted the deal that was offered by Russia to help them in their desperate economic situation, which our European allies were not willing to do. That ignited this situation. That's what turned policy type of situations and perhaps the overturn of a rotten government through electoral process into instead the overturn of the rotten regime by violent demonstrations and non-democratic means of overthrowing that regime. They could have, 2 years later, they could have kicked that Yanukovych out with a free election. They didn't wait. Let me ask you about, okay, so let us hope that what we're doing now is aimed at trying to end the conflict that started in that more complicated way than black and white. What people are advocating that we send weapons, to Ukraine, the defensive weapons, would any of these weapons be under, do we see any of these weapons becoming part of the arsenal of that part of the Ukrainian army that is financed, which I believe a third of the Ukrainian army is now, that is in conflict, is financed by a oligarch, a private citizen who happens to be a multi-billionaire?
First of all, Congressman, thank you. I will respectfully take issue with some of the facts that you presented here.
Go right ahead. I'm happy to do that. That's fine.
First of all, in the fall of 2013, the reason that folks went to the Maidan was not because money was taken from Russia. It was because former President Yanukovych turned his back on the EU association agreement that he had for 6 months been promising his people.
Yeah.
It got worse after.
Have you read that agreement?
I have.
And do you believe that agreement, I have as well, do you believe that that agreement was superior to what the Russians were offering?
Let me speak to that. So in the same period, in the fall of 2013, when Yanukovych was talking to the EU about association,
Right.
he was also working with the IMF on an IMF package similar to what was offered later and what we have now. I was working as the U.S. government's representative to him to try to get him to meet IMF conditions.
Okay.
I
Listen,
had more than
I've only
30
got 25 seconds.
hours of meetings with him,
Listen, I've only
and
got
he
25
declined to meet
Excuse
conditions.
me.
Yeah.
I only have 25 seconds
Please.
before they cut me off.
Okay.
So I want to make this point.
Let me speak to the weapons
hey,
issue.
It's not your time. They're going to cut me off in 15 seconds. I hope that what we're doing is trying to bring peace to the Ukrainians and not to humiliate the Russians. And there's a lot of people who, and I understand, I was a big Cold Warrior as well. Our goal should be to try to have peace in that part of the world, not to try to humiliate Russia again and again and again. There's too many people being killed out there, and I would hope that we have that with decentralization, which seems to be accepted by both sides, that string of those, that area of eastern Ukraine can remain part of Ukraine, even though that now you have this separatist violence going on, that with promise of decentralization and respect for everybody's rights and an end to the violence, that we can end this situation, and that should be our goal. And I would hope that we don't get caught up in trying to reestablish a Cold War with Russia, because we have so many people who have grudges. And by the way, I understand that. Russians during the Cold War murdered how many Ukrainians? But our goal shouldn't be right now to make them pay for that, what they did during Stalin's era, but bring peace to that region. And I would hope that we can work together on that. I'm sorry, but they're going to cut me off right now.